Oh, Friday night. My goodness, it's been, I don't know how many Fridays have we missed now?
Well, it's been a few because when we did the before the championship, we did a Thursday night,
We
and then
did.
last week we did a Thursday night because we did it was a Wednesday night because we did the interview with the two world
That's right.
champions,
That's right.
and so an actual Friday night. It's been like 3 weeks.
That's right. Okay. Yeah.
So I was actually thinking about this one. How many times have you and I done this where one of us has been in a different state?
That's a good trivia question. I don't know.
So I'm in Southern Oregon visiting my wife's family, which is great. I went for a run this morning and it was like 62 degrees,
Oh, nice.
which was really nice. And
Yeah.
we literally just got out of the pool. We were swimming at the YMCA here, where my wife was I don't know if we've talked about this. My wife was a collegiate swimmer,
Yeah.
and so this is where she grew up swimming. And she's like, "Oh yeah, I remember this. I used to be a lifeguard here." And so we're
Oh,
chit chatting them at the front desk, and there's a lady behind us, and we're like, "Oh, sorry, we're taking up all your time." And you remember? And oh yeah, yeah. And so next thing you know, oh, you used to be a lifeguard here. These are my guests. So then we didn't have
oh.
to pay. Life was good.
VIP.
We're VIPs around here. It was
I love
awesome.
it.
Yeah, and honestly, like I love the running up here. There's
Yeah. Yeah.
there's a trail that is, I think it's 32 miles long. It goes from
Right.
Ashland to basically to Medford,
Yep.
and there's no stopping. It's a bike path.
Mm-hmm.
There's very few people on it, and you can just run for
Mm-hmm.
forever. And it's not steep or anything. There's no steep climbs. It's just trees on either side.
Yeah.
It's just beautiful. Yeah.
Well, I spent some time in Eugene, obviously, and I tell you, this time of year is beautiful, but it's also air quality can go downhill really fast because it's spring and everything just blooms, and all of a
Yeah.
sudden, poof, you get these clouds of pollen out there, and
Yeah,
uh,
there is a lot in the air here. You're right.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But
But
that's what you get when it's green.
yeah, it's right, and it's green because it's you got all the wetness and it's beautiful. But yeah, I doing all the hiking. I wasn't doing as much training up there when I was living up there, and but we were doing a lot of hiking. And it was just beautiful. But okay, so back to your question on how many times have we not been in the same states? I don't know, but the odds are it's usually you out of state. So
Yeah, no, it's true. Most of the time it's been me out of state. That's true. I think
yeah,
there's been a few times when you've been out of state,
yeah, yeah.
but it's mostly been me and my gypsy blood.
That's right. That's great. And
So
you got Cosmo, obviously.
we don't actually.
Oh no.
We flew up because we're just here for the weekend,
Okay.
and so we don't have Cosmo.
Hmm.
Thankfully, my parents are in Vegas and they're watching him. Marie's going through withdrawals. She's never been. She has. I don't think she's ever been
Uh,
away from Cosmo for this long,
yeah. Oh.
and so yeah, it is what it is. It just
Uh,
wasn't in the cards.
okay. So then you're typically out of town. I'm typically doing something on my trailer, and so I was
Yep.
actually going. I was actually doing some work on the trailer down there. So
Oh, you
that's
were.
yeah. Just doing little projects here and there.
Yep. Yep. Well, that's the best way to do it. Tackle little things and
Yeah.
yeah.
But it's
So
funny,
okay.
and I know I want to segue into our topic tonight. What I was doing is actually wiring a what's called a pilot light switch to be able to turn my air conditioning off from inside the trailer because the way I have it set up, I've got a fan that runs external to keep the circulation of the air so the air conditioner actually works efficiently. But I have to go outside the trailer to turn that fan off or on. And so I wanted to
Oh,
wire a switch inside to be able to turn everything on from inside or off. And so I did that, but I had to wait. I could not be making decisions on where to put wires when after St. George. I really, it's funny how my mental capacity just really takes a nosedive after an Ironman race.
it's that's so interesting you say that because you've heard the term Ironman brain.
Yeah, yeah.
Normally, people associate that with your big training weeks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like 3 weeks before, 4 weeks before, you start making mistakes that you probably wouldn't
Yeah.
make. I actually went through something like this similar last week as well. At work and in school and teaching, and we had exams, and I messed up on a few of the exams.
Yeah.
Um, and it was just little things that I would not make that mistake normally.
Right.
But it's weird, like how when you do an Ironman, how the recovery is not just a physical thing,
Mm-hmm.
it's mental. And if you think about it, being engaged for the amount of hours,
Yeah.
right? So let's say, I don't know, I'm just speaking for me, I had to be awake at 3, I think it was 3:15 by the time, to get to the shuttle. My shuttle got lost on the way,
Oh,
which was
no.
which was interesting. Julie actually dropped me off, and she went and dropped off our bags, our special needs bags, and then parked,
Mm-hmm.
and she beat me
Oh,
to the T1.
wow.
So my bus driver, all of a sudden, she's like, you could tell that she didn't know where she was going.
Oh, that's
And
terrible.
so I think it was a 45-minute, 50-minute bus ride.
Oh, wow.
But once again, mentally, right? Like these
Mm-hmm.
are things that are like, you're like engaged in your brain, and then you set up your transition area, you do
Yeah.
this, you do that. It's just mental engagement that is, you don't normally have that kind of mental engagement at 5, 6 in the morning.
Yeah. Right.
And
Right.
and then, pre-race, you're nervous, you're making sure you
Mm-hmm.
got this, and then you race, let's say it's 12 to 14,
Mm-hmm.
17 hours of basically battling your brain.
Yeah. Right.
I think an Ironman is truly a battle between you and your consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
because it's so, it's just, every bit of it, like, this is going to hurt, this hurts, this, I need to pull back here, I need to go a little bit
Mm-hmm.
more aggressive here, I need to do this, when am I going to get my next drink?
Yeah. Right.
What's my next aid station going to look
Oh, you're
like?
constantly thinking. That's
You're
right.
constantly thinking, and there's not too many of us that, I know there's people that have jobs like that, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
you think of like a surgeon that has a long surgery,
Yeah.
right? A 12-hour surgery where they're mentally, you have to be on. But for most of us, that's not a thing that we have to do, where
Mm-hmm.
there's no downtime. It's not like, I'm just gonna go close my eyes, I'm gonna, I'm gonna just take a break for half an hour or 45
Yeah.
minutes.
Right.
That's not a thing. There's no lunch break, right?
No. Right. No,
There's no
and I
coffee
like the way
break.
you're explaining this, because you're right. I usually think of just the event as being, the stressor, but really it's the day before, all the pre-race things that we've got to do. And then, the night before, you're not sleeping as much, and you had to get up at the wee hours. I think I slept in, but then I had to go charge my bike because I
Yeah,
forgot
you did.
I forgot to charge my bike. But yeah,
But still, most people in an Ironman are going to be up that early,
yeah, that's right.
right?
Or they're not
And
going to sleep well at all.
yeah,
So now
yeah,
you've got really a 48-hour window that you are just taxed mentally, and on top of the physical.
yeah. So when we talk about the recovery from one of these races,
Hmm.
I think we need to think of the mental as well as the physical. You
Hmm.
know, I even was thinking about when we drove home the next day,
Yeah,
and it was a tough drive home.
yeah,
We went
because you're
through a
sitting. Hmm.
serious windstorm,
Hmm.
dust storm. I'm glad you left early, by the way. You kind of beat most of it, I think.
Hmm.
But I couldn't imagine driving myself. Just having to be mentally on. But I know people do that. Like they
Yeah,
drive.
right.
You did it.
Hmm.
Driving after an Ironman like that, it's probably just as bad as being, intoxicated.
Well, I was on Ironman minus 13 miles at that point, and that
Yes.
last 13 miles does make a difference. And so I actually felt reasonably well. And so for those who don't know, I didn't finish and still gutted on it. It just eating me up. But I had no business. I mean, of complaining, because I just did not have the fitness going into it. But that last 13 miles, I think, does that's where I think a lot of the damage happens, in
Yeah.
that second half of the Ironman.
But I mean, obviously, John, you've completed many Ironmans, and you've competed and had some amazing times. But you probably weren't mentally great the next day.
No,
You
no, don't, yeah, definitely, and still not, at a point where I always say after an Ironman, don't make any big decisions, the
No.
next day, even half Ironman. I mean, because your brain just is not operating at full speed. So,
Well, and I don't, I can't I have a very difficult time sleeping after an Ironman too.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
I think it's a combination of just the stress, once again, the mental stress of the
yeah.
day, and then the
Mhm.
caffeine consumption for me.
Oh,
Like,
yeah, totally.
I mean, I lost count at some point of how much caffeine I was ingesting. I had a plan, but we talked about plans before.
Yeah.
When I'm on the run, and I might have had, honestly, I may have had 14 Mortons on the run.
Oh, goodness.
I was just hungry. I just couldn't,
Wow.
I just felt like I couldn't get enough calories in. And I didn't have any GI issues.
Yeah, yeah, that's great.
I didn't have to stop once to go to the
Mm.
bathroom. And for number two, that is.
Yeah, yeah.
And um and then I was taking whatever they had, like whatever someone was giving me. It could have been a caffeinated one, it could have not been a caffeinated one.
Yep,
It
yep.
didn't matter. I wanted the
Mhm.
calories.
Mm.
So yeah, I'm gonna roughly say maybe 1,000 milligrams of caffeine in the day.
Oh, wow.
When you add it all up,
Yeah.
between like pre-race, all the gels, all the, start adding it up. I
Well,
was
I'm
drinking,
envious
I was drinking
because,
Coke on the bike.
you
There's
know, what
caffeine there.
yeah, I'm envious that you were hungry and able to eat because that I couldn't even take in ice cubes, and it just, I don't know, once that heat goes up, my stomach goes south, and it's torturous at that point. But that's good to hear. And but you're right, now that you even say, okay, so we're talking 48 hours from the day before to to that race. But you're right, you don't sleep well the night of, like when you get back. There's still a little, race, or not anticipation, but just rethinking things. And then if you're staying with someone, now you got to rehash everything. And I think where I went back, I ended up staying with Laura and who she was staying with. And, uh, and so, I think it was like at 1 o'clock, everyone got up and just started chatting about the event. And so now you're up for another hour, losing
Yep.
that sleep as well.
I couldn't have slept either way.
Yeah.
Like I think I got back to where I was staying by about 8 o'clock,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and maybe 8:30. By the time I ate
Yeah.
something. I can't even remember what I ate, but ate something, and then I went laid down in bed, put the
Yeah.
Normatec boots on, and I literally laid there for the next 4 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
3.5, 4 hours, and then Julie came back,
Yeah.
and I'm like, well, I'm not sleeping, so I might as well go chat with Julie. Because
Yeah.
same thing, right?
Yeah.
So we hashed
Yeah.
the day, and
Yeah.
next thing you know, it's 1:30 in the morning, and I don't,
Mm-hmm.
I may have slept an hour. So
Yeah.
yeah, you start adding that up. Now you're like, yeah, you're 72 hours of not really resting and not really sleeping.
So our close colleague, who
Mhm.
may be listening to this at some point, Dr. Graham McGinnis, his research is on what is called social jet lag. And that is an interesting phenomena where it's a jet lag phenomena, but it's not time zone jet lag. It's where you have a normal sleep cycle for, Monday through Friday, and then you have abnormal sleep cycle for Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then you, in essence, induce a jet lag because of that social aspect of staying up later on the weekends or doing something. In this case, it's the social jet lag caused by a race. It's really interesting.
So yeah, and that is so interesting. And that's he's not really doing that in like the athletics world. He's just doing that just in the general world,
That's right. That's
right?
right.
So there's some research on this as well in collegiate sports and collegiate football in particular.
Hmm.
So let me give you an example. So the team will remain nameless, but they play at Allegiant Stadium, and they are a college team. So this was several years ago. They practice in the morning, so 8 a.m., let's say 7:30, 8
Hmm.
a.m. So the guys are getting to practice, having breakfast at like 5, 6, practice at 8 a.m.
Yep.
So they did that all week. Then Friday night they had a game. And so Friday night's game, because of TV issues, was like, I think it was 7:30 kickoff.
Okay.
So there's a big shift there, right?
Hmm.
And you're playing under lights, TV cameras on,
Yep.
right? You're taking, these guys, same like us, take a bunch of caffeine before. So now they've jet lagged themselves.
Yeah. Right.
So then game doesn't go so well. So the coach calls it Sunday practice. So they get Saturday off. Well, what are they going to do on Saturday night? These are college athletes.
Mm-hmm.
They were up late the night before, probably didn't get to bed, if they did, till 2 or 3 in the morning. Then the next night, probably going to go out.
Yeah.
And now we're going to have a Sunday evening / afternoon evening practice.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. So now you've had 3 days to shift your circadian rhythms.
Yeah.
Then, Monday comes, Monday morning practice again.
Mm-hmm.
And my understanding was the coach was really upset because they were dragging on Monday morning.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And it's like, well, what do you expect? You're
Right.
shifting these athletes around so much.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we do this to ourselves in triathlon all the time, right?
Yep.
By when you think about what we're talking about not sleeping or waking up at 3 in the morning. Well, if I normally wake up at 6 in the morning and now I'm waking up at 3 in the morning in a different time zone, it's
Yep.
2 in the morning, and then I don't sleep. And then, so you're right, we're creating these circadian rhythm shifts
Yeah.
that can be quite deleterious to our health and to our performance.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll have to have him on to talk about this.
I've invited him many times.
Yeah.
He keeps saying no, but I'm gonna keep twisting it.
We'll keep pushing the prep buttons there.
Yeah.
No, that's good, and it is an issue, and I don't know the research in that area, but I would think that age does come into play because when we're young we're immortal and we can do all sorts of things, but as we get older it just gets a little tougher, and I would say recovery is so much harder as I've gotten older. Just an anecdote. It's yeah, I think
Yeah.
age is a factor.
Yeah, it is interesting, right? When we look at the research on age and recovery,
Mm-hmm.
and there's not a lot of good research on it,
Mm-hmm.
but anecdotally, everybody you talk to basically says this is an issue,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Not every, but most of the coaches that I listen to or read, they talk about the aging athlete. Even Joe Friel has that, the Fast After 50 book, and a lot of it is talking about the recovery side.
Yeah.
So I think that when we talk about recovery from an Ironman, it's a different, potentially someone different, someone that's 29 versus somebody that's 50 or 55.
Yeah.
But just as the same to be said, that the day-to-day recovery is different from when you're in your 20s to when you're in your 50s. And I think, go ahead.
I was gonna say, and I think your training state going in is a big factor. So I listened to Aaron Baker's video that just came out on. Aaron Baker was a big time pro triathlete back in the 80s, 90s, and from New Zealand. And she was talking about how she was just doing an insane amount of volume, and that worked for her. And but that would carry her through from race to race as well, and would influence what she could do after an Ironman.
No, I think you're right, and I notice a difference it's weird. Like, I was not very fit going into this race, and I was actually less sore after this race than I was after most of my 70.3s.
Interesting.
But I attribute it to I ran so damn slow.
Yeah, but you're out racing so much longer than you normally would.
Yeah, true. But if no, so I think I did 9-minute miles. In a 70.3 that we did in Oceanside, I think I was 640 mile.
Wow.
Right. So you think about like the actual like pounding on the legs.
Yeah.
Running faster for me, I think, is the thing that created more like of the soreness. Now, that doesn't mean there wasn't a lot of fatigue there.
Right.
Just it's a different kind of soreness that, more when you're going faster, you're creating greater eccentric load on the quadricep muscles.
Right.
And I think that, that was part of it, but I don't, the level of overall fatigue was higher, even though I wasn't as sore.
Yeah. Well, as you know, and we've talked about this a lot, you run differently at different speeds. And so if all of a sudden you're running a speed that you don't normally train at, that's a whole new experience. And your muscles and tendons, and I mean, you're experiencing new stress just because of a change in the way you're running.
Yeah. Oh, I've sorenesses in way different spots than I normally did.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
the worst was my hip flexors. And I think it's because I literally was like limping, running,
Mm-hmm.
for probably the last 10 miles.
Well, it was a hilly course too. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. And I'm going significantly slower. Like I
mm-hmm.
purposely in the running I did do to build for this, I was running like 8:30 pace
Yeah, right, right.
and for my easy runs. And normally my easier runs, or not really my easy runs, but my longer runs were like 8:30. Normally they're 8:08. And I was like, well, because I was targeting running at about 8:30.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did purposely do that, but I ended up running a lot of it at 9 or higher.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're right, my gait was completely different.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Like
Mm.
you if you have seen me run before, you wouldn't recognize me
Yeah, right, right.
running. And I'm actually surprised you even saw that it was me
I
when
was
we crossed paths.
I was still a little conscious at that point, but yeah, I saw you, and your running style was not your typical running style. I can tell you that much. So
Well, you got me near about halfway up the hill on the way
yeah,
back.
yeah.
And man, yeah, my whole thing
You
was I would keep running. Just
you
keep.
were sweating and working hard, that's for sure. So
Yeah, that's for sure. So, anyways, as we get into this now, we've decided that definitely we need to recover.
mm-hmm.
And let's talk specifically about like older athletes and recovery rather than like the young guns, because like if we look at the young guns, and we can go to the pro model even here, like Lionel
Yeah,
Sanders races the next weekend,
it's
right?
amazing. Yeah.
And after literally torturing himself.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's not us.
No.
Like if there was a race the next weekend and there was, if they say, hey, you know what, there's $100,000 prize if you can do a 10K under
Yeah.
40 minutes, which for 100 grand I probably could do. I
Right.
couldn't do it.
Right. Right.
Right. There's no physical way that I can do
Uh,
it. And so I think we do need to really think about like what strategies that we can do to actually recover quick,
mm-hmm.
but that don't put us in a hole, right? Because I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times athletes want to get back so quick
Yeah.
because they feel like they're losing fitness,
Mm-hmm.
and especially in an Ironman, if you did a 2-week taper,
Yeah.
right? So that 2-week taper, you feel like you're losing fitness in your taper,
Right.
and then you race, and then it's like, oh my gosh, like I haven't trained in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Now I got to take another 2 weeks
Mm-hmm.
of limited training. Well, that's a month. And for
Right.
many endurance athletes, the thought of taking a month off of training is enough to just drive them completely bananas.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that we do really need to think about how we can do this and be successful with it. So,
Mm-hmm.
John, in your history, what have you done or not done or done wrong during that?
Non-weight bearing is the biggest part for me, and the mistakes I've made is to run too soon after a big race. But swimming, I'll get in and swim relatively soon afterwards, but not any heavy workout. And then working and biking, and then eventually running. But running is the mistake of getting back at it too soon on the run has been the, the the mistake I've made in the past.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. So one of the things that I'm a big fan of is movement, right?
Mm-hmm.
You said it, non-weight bearing movement, but I would even contend that some weight bearing as far as like just walking.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? For me, that's the one thing that when I'm sore or when I'm trying to recover, I think that walking is a really, really good thing. So,
Mm-hmm.
consciously a couple times a day, going for a half-hour walk as
Mm-hmm.
fast as you can, as fast as you want to go, as far as like
Yeah.
where your soreness level is, because the research does actually show that increased blood flow is a really good way to recover.
Yeah.
Way
Bed
better
rest.
than, yeah,
Bed rest is bad.
bed rest is bad. And the fitness losses are so much greater with bed rest.
Mm-hmm.
And you can mitigate a lot of the fitness losses by doing just very basic things, like you said, like walking,
Mm-hmm.
or even an easy swim.
Yeah.
Because not only do we have the blood flow just from the exercise, but then there's hydrostatic pressure, which we've talked about before.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a great idea. Easy cycling,
Yeah.
where I tell people, if you're going to ride outside, just small chain ring is all you get.
Yeah.
You don't get to put it in the big chain ring,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and you got to ride flat.
Yeah, right.
No hills, just go
Mhm.
ride flat, eat small chain ring. And once again, getting blood flow in and out
Mhm.
of the musculature, and not just blood flow, but like the lymphatic system as well, which we
Mhm.
don't
Mhm.
touch much on, but that's where a lot of the waste products from exercise end up being filtered out.
Yeah, it's an inflammatory response when you do a race and you're inflamed, your body is on fire, but you do need to have that circulation happening in order to move some of that waste product because you've done some damage on those muscles for sure.
Yeah, and there's tons of research on this, not just
Mhm.
in triathlon, but in marathoning, is looking at blood biomarkers and looking at the inflammatory markers, looking at even markers of like heart damage.
Yeah.
All of these things are prevalent, and they take time, and the body takes time to get through this. And we've talked about this before as well, as like the inflammatory process is important,
Mhm. Yeah.
right? And doing things that quell it too much are not good either,
Mhm.
right? So we've talked about like anti-inflammatory medications.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I think the one of the worst things you could do the day after an Ironman is take a bunch of ibuprofen,
Okay.
right?
And tell why that is. What's
Well, mostly because you're blunting the inflammatory process,
mhm.
and once again, that process is the first stepping stone to rebuilding your body.
Mhm.
And you know, there's other things you can do for pain management, and probably if you want to take something, taking a Tylenol would be better because it's not an anti-inflammatory, but it
Okay.
still will decrease the pain. And then I think that would probably be the one of them. And then other things to decrease pain. I mean, just touch can decrease
Mhm.
pain. So a very light massage, even self massage,
Mhm.
can decrease pain. Electrical stim units. I mean, just having like a simple TENS unit you can buy off of Amazon for
Yeah.
$50.
Mhm.
That can decrease your pain
Mhm.
level.
Mhm.
And I think we need to I think that triathletes and athletes in general are really quick to go to an anti-inflammatory because we've been sold on the fact that inflammation is bad,
Right. Right.
and really inflammation is a necessary it's a necessary thing that happens to have a bad side effect of pain,
Mhm. Mhm.
or bad affective pain.
Mhm.
I mean, John, you've probably heard about this, right? With athletes, talking about. I've seen it on Facebook. Oh man, I took 16 Advil today,
Yeah.
day after an Ironman, so I could walk. I'm like, is that really a good idea?
Well, that's another story I had back in the 80s. I was training a lot and I was having so many knee problems and I just kept taking more and more aspirin. I ended up in the ER because I'd taken so much aspirin that my whole system had just gone south and
Wow.
that was that was
Did you get ringing ears?
I don't remember that, but I just remember I don't remember what the sensation was. Tell you the truth, that took me to the ER, but it was yeah, it was I was not in a good state.
So that's a known side effect for
Okay.
aspirin overdose, is ringing in the
Mm.
ears.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a question we always ask, like an athlete, if they come, oh, I have ringing in the ears, and you want to like, well, have you taken a bunch of
Interesting.
aspirin?
Yeah.
Because if you have, that's the reason.
Huh.
Yeah. And
Well, okay,
aspirin's
so
especially but aspirin's especially dangerous, by the way, just
mhm.
so we can go down this,
Yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
it's important for people to know, like if you were going to take a bunch of something, ibuprofen would be better than aspirin, because
Yeah.
aspirin is, once it attaches to its receptor, it's non-reversible.
Oh, interesting.
And so you just keep building up more and more aspirin
Mm-hmm.
in your system.
Mm-hmm.
And where at least with your ibuprofen, it has a relatively short half-life, and it clears
Mm-hmm.
relatively quickly.
Yeah, I was going through aspirin a little too fast, but and I actually don't know if that knee pain was a precursor to assigned to RA. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, could
Yeah,
be.
I've always wondered that if it was really knee pain or if it was an early sign of rheumatoid arthritis that I have. So okay, on the recovery and the inflammation, I think this is something I really focus on. I'd be interested in your thoughts on this. Is after a race, really focusing on hydration
Yeah,
and taking in fluid,
so
almost
important.
any type of fluid. I just try to get fluids in.
Not alcohol though.
Oh, not alcohol. That's true.
And that was one of the things I was gonna talk about is I do see this on this in social media a lot as well, is like finish the Ironman and have 6 beers.
Yeah, no.
Well, there is no way you finish an Ironman without being dehydrated.
Yeah, yeah.
There's just no way.
Right.
You cannot do it.
Yeah,
So why would you then take something that's a diuretic
yeah,
and
right.
make yourself even more dehydrated?
Hmm.
So I think you're 100% right on is you have to prioritize hydration
Yep.
and as soon as possible. Like
Yeah.
when I finish, first thing I'm doing, man, they have that water at the finish. I'm drinking one bottle of,
Yeah.
I'm not concerned anymore about like GI.
No.
If I throw it up, I throw it up,
Right, right, right.
but I want to get it in,
Yeah.
right? And then as soon as I can get another one in, get
Yeah.
another one in.
Yeah.
And you're 100% right on hydration. I think that's super, super critical. Not just that day, but the next few
Yeah,
days.
that's right. Well, what I do before races, I get my cooler and I try to put as many different things in there that I may want
Yeah.
because I have more of the stomach issues, and so you don't know if it's going to be a ginger ale, you don't know if it's going to be a Sprite, and I know that's not, it's going to be one or the other, or maybe a Coke, or maybe a chocolate milk or something, and just put them all in there and then just wait and see
That's
which one it is.
another little pro tip on this one is the day after a race, some people kind of get away from the carbohydrates
Interesting.
because they've just are kind of like sick of like.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But I love the fact you said like ginger ale or a Sprite, and not like one with zero carbohydrates, because 1 gram of carbohydrates holds, was it 3 grams of
Yeah.
water?
Yeah, yeah.
So if you're looking to rehydrate yourself or hydrate yourself, you have some carbohydrates with that, so you'll hold on to more water, and then obviously watch your salt as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, that's right.
And by what I mean by watch it is like increase it.
Mm-hmm.
One of the little tricks that I've come across is after an Ironman is that's the time to do salt supplementation.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And what had happened to me was I was doing races, and then the next day I couldn't stop peeing.
Mm-hmm.
Like every 40 minutes, 30 minutes. Now, I was trying to hydrate myself,
Yeah.
but not to a crazy extent. And then a ton of reading on why this happens, and it's because you're actually depleted of sodium. So like after the race, I supplemented with sodium.
Yeah,
And the
interesting.
next day was not nearly as bad. It's still probably more than normal, but I was trying like
Yeah,
to
yeah.
hydrate, but it wasn't to the point where I literally just kept going. And that's a sign for other people that if the day after a race you just keep peeing and peeing and peeing, you got to look at your sodium.
Oh,
So the other
interesting.
thing I think is really important, like for me at least, is we talk about carbohydrates, but also prioritizing protein. So I have probably like you have a post-race bag. Do you have a post-race bag like that someone has for you at the finish?
Not food-wise, no. That's a great idea.
Okay.
No, usually back at the hotel or trailer or what have you, and have food then.
So I have a post-race bag that usually Marie has, and it'll have like pants,
Oh yeah, okay.
a beanie, because you never know when you get cold, like
Yeah, yeah.
a jacket, whatever I want to change into. And then always there's a protein, like a recovery drink.
Okay, that's a great
And
idea.
as soon as I see her, that's the first thing I want.
Oh, interesting.
Right. So that's another one for me is prioritizing the protein, because once again, we've broken down all this muscle, and we need the protein, the amino acids in the protein to help kickstart the rebuilding. And we do know that a protein drink usually is going to be have high enough amount of leucine, which is a kind of a catalyst for the rebuilding. So I'm a big proponent of having that in your post race bag, if you have a post race bag.
I like that. I obviously have a morning clothes bag that I stuff with stuff that I want afterwards to wear, but I like.
And I've done it in my morning clothes bag. When Marie's not there, I'll put it in my morning clothes bag.
Yeah, no, I like that idea a lot of putting something in that that you most likely will be able to tolerate and have. That's good.
And mine's just chocolate milk flavored, so I
Yeah.
know I like it. I know
Hmm.
every race I've had it, and it's never been a
Yeah,
problem.
that's
But
good.
I think that's a key, is getting that right away.
Hmm.
And I forego oftentimes the post race meal,
Yeah.
uh, especially if it's like pizza or something that's really
Yeah. Yeah.
fat.
Yeah.
The last thing I want is a bunch of fat in my system. It's not
Right.
really doing any
Hmm.
good for me at that
Hmm.
point. I mean, I'll
Yeah.
get some fat in me the next day, but I'm looking at the things like the carbohydrates and the protein to
Hmm.
get myself kind of over,
Mm.
to, well, not over the hump, but to recover, because this is, triathlon is not a one and done for me.
No, right, right.
I don't want to just do an Ironman and then never race again. Now, if
Yeah,
I
right.
want to do an Ironman and never race again, I'd finish off. I'd have 6 beers and 5 pizzas, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
you know, and go ahead and lie to yourself in that last 12 miles or 10 miles and tell yourself, I'm gonna have a whole pizza when I finish.
that's right.
Go ahead and lie to yourself.
That's
Then
right.
don't do it.
Oh, I love it. All right, so what else do you do the week after? Like
So
what?
let's just talk about the night of.
Okay.
So once again, we got back to our Airbnb, and I think I can't, honestly, I can't remember what I ate. I ate something, but I went up to bed, and well, I had a shower, obviously, that's an important thing, just shower, got into bed, and then I have a Normatec. And
Okay.
I literally just laid there for the next 2.5 hours,
Oh, nice.
put a podcast on,
Yeah,
just so my eyes were kind of fried too.
yeah.
I couldn't watch TV or anything like
No,
that.
right, right.
So I just put a podcast on. I listened to a podcast about Rodney Dangerfield.
Oh, interesting.
It was a really interesting, it was basically a biography of Rodney Dangerfield. And I was like, well, that's kind of, I don't really care too much
Good.
about it. So if I do
Yeah.
fall asleep, great. If not, whatever.
Hmm.
And so you listen to a few podcasts, and then I was kind of keeping track on my tracker of my friends that were still racing,
Hmm.
every now and then keep track, but mostly it was the Normatec. And I had it on, I think, for 2.5 hours. And then once again, Julie came back, and then I got out of it and chatted. And then I went back into it for another half hour.
Hmm.
But about 1:32 in the morning, I'm like, I did turn this off because Marie can't sleep. I'm sure with
Yeah, right. You keep waking her up.
cycling on and off. But so I
Yeah.
turned it off. And then I think that in retrospect, I maybe should have put like compression on then. Like, I know
Hmm.
you do the Incrediwear.
Yeah.
That would have been a really good time to probably put that
Hmm.
on.
Hmm.
Because I still woke up and my legs were swollen the next
Just pretty
morning,
trashed. Yeah, yeah.
you know.
You
And
know,
then, but
I was gonna say the research on this stuff is still really hard to tease out, but the what we do know is it's not hurting. It's not going to make things go in the wrong direction. And so I like this approach of trying something. So that's good.
if I'm gonna lay there and can't sleep,
Yeah, right.
might as well do something, like
Yeah.
at least something maybe mentally that at least tells me, hey, this is helping you,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? And you're right. I just can't even imagine how you would pull together a research
Yeah.
on someone doing an epic event like a full Ironman, and
Mm-hmm.
then Norma teching or not, or putting it like a recovery boots on or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, Obviously the research hasn't been done,
Mm-hmm.
but man, that would be really hard to do. Not that we couldn't do it, but it would be a very difficult protocol.
No, it is because every race is different and every experience is different. The environment's different, and all these things. We're advising a student now on doing some field work for cycling, and it is tough because every time you think you got an experiment down, it's like, well, what if?
Yeah.
And there's so many things that you can't control in the field, which is why we do laboratory work because you can control everything. But now that you go out in the field, you can't control these things. You have to try to at least document all the different factors, as many as you can, so that maybe later on, with additional work, you can tell a story. But it's really hard when there's so many things you can't control.
Well, and the interesting thing about recovery is, like, how do you measure recovery,
Yeah,
right?
right.
And is it that I feel better? Because what
Hmm.
if once again, I can take a bunch of drugs and feel better. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean I am better,
Hmm.
right? And we look at the recovery research. there, we oftentimes look at how you feel.
Yeah.
So it's, just simple pain scales, or just,
Mm-hmm.
there's lots of different scales we can use.
Yeah.
And then there's people that will do like plyometric jump tests, like a box
Mm-hmm.
jump
Yeah.
test, or a
Right.
vertical jump test.
Yep.
Or they'll do a time trial. So get you on
Mm-hmm.
the bike and
Yeah.
do a time trial. But do those really indicate truly what is recovery or what's not? And
What's physiologically recover and what's mental recovery, because your motivation to exercise, changes during that period. And
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, honestly, you're probably in the same boat. Like after an Ironman, is like, do you really want to exercise the next day?
Yeah. Right.
I sure don't.
No, but that's the tough thing about a triathlete is it gets so ingrained in your schedule that you're like, oh, this is my time to run, or this is my time to do that. And you really need to break that out and be very purposeful that one week after. And really, it can take, people talk, you're not feeling back to normal until 4 weeks later. And normal is still, sort of a relative term, or you're feeling like you really are getting something out of your training. This just anecdotally.
Like for me, even like today I ran. Today was the first day I ran once earlier in the week, and I had stone legs, and so
Yeah.
we cut it short. And today I
Mm-hmm.
ran and actually felt okay, good.
Yeah. Yeah.
But my pace for my perceived exertion was not where it should be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, I'm still not there.
No. Right.
And we're 13 days
Mm-hmm.
after,
Mm-hmm.
we swam, and I felt horrible swimming still. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it is an interesting phenomenon that we go through, and we think we're better,
Yeah.
we think we're ready, but we're really not.
No. And that's the danger zone. That's where you can tip the scale in the wrong direction at that point.
Yeah, yeah, I was, kind of purposeful in my first week. Now, as the saga continues, and this, and I'll share this, is I, was diagnosed with a reoccurrence of shingles
Yep.
2 days after the race. So
Ah,
on Monday. So that kind of put there was no training, because I was like, that's, my body is telling me,
yep.
you've just, you're,
No, that is a immune response.
yeah.
Hmm.
And so I just shut it down for the whole week. And but honestly, I didn't feel like, maybe it's because the shingles,
Right.
and then the medication I was on because of the shingles. I think the medication
Hmm.
was worse than the shingles at some points. But even like, I just, yeah, but even either way, I think it was the right decision to not
Hmm.
train for a week. And I walked every morning. I
Yeah.
got up and took Cosmo. We walked for like a half hour, 45 minutes,
Oh, good. Yeah.
walked every evening.
Yeah.
And not at a fast pace,
Hmm.
just walked. And there was a few days where I'm like, oh, maybe I should just, get on my treadmill and walk, or
Yeah.
get on the, at one point I was going to get on my bike and just spin. And I was like, you know what? No,
Hmm.
just no. And
Hmm.
fortunately, my bike was in pieces, just traveling and taking the bike apart. And even
We,
we drove, but
oh, okay.
I
Okay. Okay.
still, my seat post was out, and it was a
Yeah.
mess. It was all sticky,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and I was, and actually, at the expo, I bought a new bottom bracket, and I'm like, well, I'm not going to ride it until I get the new bottom bracket put in.
Oh, nice.
And so it was good. It was,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I didn't hear about the new bottom bracket. What?
So my bottom bracket has been just, it's, my bike's getting kind of old,
Yeah.
and it was just kind of like, I've cleaned the bearings before. I've,
Yeah.
pressure washed them
Yeah.
and repacked them, and they're just not as smooth anymore.
Hmm.
And so at the expo, I got a pretty good deal on a new bottom bracket.
Oh,
And
good. Yeah. Well, you
so,
put a lot of miles on that bike, so
yeah, I think there's probably like 40,000 miles on that bike or
yeah.
something.
Yeah.
So yeah, I bought a new bottom bracket, and then that was one of the things, like one of the cool things to do when you're recovering is work on your bike,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
because you still feel like you're engaged
Doing
and you're doing
something, right?
something. You were
Hmm.
working on your trailer. I worked on my bike. It's actually the first time I ever pressed a bottom bracket bearing.
Okay. Yeah.
So I bought the tools, and I actually pressed I've done the wheel bearings,
Okay.
but I've never done the bottom bracket. And so did that, and I felt a sense of accomplishment that it
That's
all
good.
worked.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that was good. And then, you know, cleaned the bike. Actually, when I took the bottom bracket out, I've never done this before. I pretty much took everything out of the bike, out of the frame, the battery, everything.
Yep.
And I took a hose and I literally put it in the seat tube.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And just like, because I've never done that. And I'm like, oh man, the water coming out of there was pretty dusty. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
recognize like little pieces of dust get in, and there's little holes everywhere that, you know, where your wires go in. So power washed the inside of my frame. And
Oh,
yeah, but that's part of
just,
recovery for me, right? It was like
well,
a
yeah, and
mental,
think of where that dirt came from. That dirt was from Charleston. That's dirt from, St. George, obviously. And
Australia,
yeah, yeah.
Europe, you know, like all over the place.
Oh, wow.
So I think that the part of the mental recovery for me is doing things that I think are going to progress me in triathlon without
Yep.
physically, because I
Hmm.
want to do, right. And um I want to keep progressing
Yeah.
without putting extra like stress on myself.
That's right. That's right. Well, and you and I have talked about this other issue before, is writing down notes afterwards.
Yeah.
And I do try to write things down as soon as I can, because your mind changes, and your interpretation of things change. And so I try to write things down as close to, finishing as possible. And yeah, and it's interesting going back and reading that, but
So I don't write them. I don't write things down after a race.
no.
I don't. And it's an interesting thing. I think probably should do it. But then I
Hmm.
was thinking to myself, would I actually go back and read it?
Right.
You know, it's a good. So do you actually go back and read it, like at the next race? You go back and read the previous race, or what do you?
Not always, but I have, and I tried to. Well, in this case, because I DNF'd, I tried to write down things, that led to that, and how to avoid that again. And then you even struggle with, well, should I have stopped or should I have not stopped? And I think, you start doubting yourself. So by writing it down close to the time, I mean, because obviously a week later you're in a different mindset, and you're like, well, how,
Yeah, you bring up a good point, because I think we all, like, in the moment,
mm-hmm,
the moment is different than a week later.
yeah, yeah,
Because like I look back at some of the races I've raced, and I'm like, oh man, why didn't I just run a little faster between
mm-hmm,
mile 5 and
yeah,
7?
yeah,
Like I look at
yeah,
my splits and I'm like,
yeah,
why did I not do that? I
yeah,
totally could have done that.
yeah.
But on the day when I was racing it, that was as fast as I could go.
That's right. Mm-hmm,
Right. And even that night, you're probably thinking, yeah, I put everything I could. But then you start like second guessing yourself. You're looking at your data and you're like,
mm-hmm,
well, why did I have that lull there? And you
mm-hmm,
don't remember. Well, you had that lull there because you're kind of bonking a little bit and you're a little dehydrated,
mm-hmm,
and you kind of lost your mojo
mm-hmm,
for, for a little bit.
yeah,
And that's racing.
yeah, yeah,
Right? And I think you're right. If you write it down right afterwards, maybe you don't have the same doubts.
yeah. Well, it's interesting, for one of our students that we were working with, we were looking to do some real-time measurements during a race, and like blood glucose and core temp and so forth. And you and I have each done some of these measurements during the race, but the trick is always trying to go back and tell the exact story of fuel or hydration that you take in. And so I was looking to eventually just take a handheld recorder and try to record along the way, things. And that would be interesting to, record even thoughts, or, obviously, I just ate this gel, or this, I ate some banana. Uh, but yeah, that would be interesting to have a recording
Yeah,
of,
you almost need a drone to follow you, that you
yeah,
could, a
yeah,
microphone that you could talk to. 'Cause these ones, they now have the camera drones with actually
yeah,
microphones,
yeah,
and
that's right. That's right.
it can actually watch you eat.
Yeah,
And
right.
that would be a really cool.
Well, because we know when we look at nutrition research, diet recall is terrible,
Oh,
and it's so inaccurate. And so now we're talking, here we're talking about how the brain's working in these events. I mean, your recall of exactly what happened is probably pretty bad. So, I mean, you have the wrappers to go off of in terms of,
oh,
what you had and what you
I try
didn't
and throw them away. I don't want to
have.
carry them
Yeah,
around.
right. That's great.
John, I ended up, it was so funny. I had no idea how much nutrition I had on me when I finished.
Well, okay, I was going to ask you because I saw your finish line
Yeah,
video
the
and you're
video, and I'm like
packed
loaded.
objects. What did you have?
I had like 6 Mortons. I know, normally I just take those because they're like $4 a piece. But I had no idea because every time I did an aid station, I'm like, oh, I'm hungry. I'll grab a couple. So
Yeah,
then I'd eat one. And the
yeah.
next aid station, I was like, I literally was losing my mind as
Oh,
far as what I had. And yeah, so I saw the video too, and I'm like,
you're
what?
carrying an extra 10 pounds of.
I got like maybe is my here's my thing. The last 3 miles was downhill. I'm like, I need a little extra weight to
That's
get me
funny.
there. But it's funny you saw that too, because I saw it and I'm like, oh my gosh, how much weight have I been carrying all afternoon?
Well, I remember I did Vineman, and I was coming in on the bike, and I needed to get more water, and I didn't want to throw the bottle away because once you're outside the aid station, you don't want to litter, and so I stuck the bottle back behind my shirt, and I was on the run, and this guy comes along and says, "What's in your shirt?" And I'm thinking it was sponges, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to stay cool, and so I ran a little bit more. I don't remember what triggered it, but eventually I think I saw my shadow or something. I said, "What's back here?" Oh, it's still the bottle. So I was carrying a bottle in my shirt on the run.
Yeah, you don't know.
No.
You have no idea. Yeah, when I saw that video, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that. But now the good news is my next race, I've got 6 gels ready to go.
Oh, good. Yeah, there you go. That's funny. Well, you know what? Someone posted an article, I think on our Tri Club page, where they're talking about pro triathletes storing fuel, and they said they're mostly storing it down the front of their jersey.
Yep.
And I thought that is a great solution because a lot of times you don't want to put it on the bike because
Yeah.
you don't want to disrupt the aerodynamics
Airflow.
of the bike and what have you. And so
But then what
that's
about the
interesting.
airflow over the body?
Yeah, well, if you stick it in the front, that can almost end up being a little bit of an aero advantage because
True.
you're almost building that filling that gap of the bike. So or that
Until you want to unzip. So you unzip to cool down and all your nutrition.
yeah, right, right, right.
Can you imagine that? Have all your gels are, oh man, I'm getting hot on this climb.
Yeah,
Unzip.
yeah,
Oh.
yeah. Well, it's funny because on the run, I was trying to cool off. And so I was taking the bag of ice and I was putting it down in front. And I'm like going by the photographer and I'm like, oh, my picture's going to look like I got this belly. I was
So
just trying to cool the gut down.
and the actually cooling was obviously the name of the game in
Hmm.
the run especially.
Yeah.
Well, even in the bike ride, I mean, going up those 2 climbs with tailwinds did
Yeah.
not help with the
Yeah.
temperature mitigation. But let me ask you a question, and this
Mhm.
is we'll kind of leave at this. Why why is triathlon, Ironman triathlon in particular, so brutal that every race has a hot run?
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
We look at athletics,
Hmm.
they would never run a marathon
No.
in the heat of the day, right? Even
No.
in Tokyo, they ran it at what, 5 in the morning was the
Yeah.
men's?
Yeah.
5 in the morning, so we get and they went to Sapporo,
Hmm.
so they went north so they could get a cooler run. At the World Championships a few years ago in Doha, Qatar, they ran the marathon at midnight
Yeah. Yeah.
under lights.
Right.
So they figured something out here, right? Boston Marathon, April.
That's right. April. New
Oh,
York is November. Yeah,
so,
you don't do a competitive marathon in the summer. You do it in the spring or fall.
so are we just glutton for punishment in
Oh,
Ironman?
totally.
Like it's like what's the worst possible case for running? Huh.
Mm, yeah,
Let's make it hot. Yeah,
yeah,
let's get a hot race.
that's right.
I mean, how many Ironmans in North America are there that you're guaranteed a cool run?
Yeah, well, Alaska.
That's it.
I think
And
I'm
and
jealous of Julie going up and doing
I
Alaska
know,
now. That's going to be great.
but other than Alaska,
Yeah,
right? Ironman Canada has been, especially now it's
no,
back in
no.
Penticton, as hot as can be.
Oh, we had a hot one there. Whistler, we had a hot one.
Yeah.
Mont Tremblant was hot.
You think, well, we'll go to Ironman Arizona. It's
It,
November.
it,
Now,
it could be one, Arizona and St. George. you don't know what you're gonna get.
Yeah.
And you could have it one way or the other. Silverman was the other one here in the fall, November. That was one that typically was cool, but it could be hot too.
Yeah. So the only thing I can think of is the reason they have to do this is because you have to have a lake or something warm enough.
Yeah, that's true.
Swim in it.
Yeah.
Right. But so there you have to have, I guess, a balance there, right? Between swimmable lake and air temperature is going to go up to a certain point. But I was actually thinking about this when we did Oceanside, and we're talking about how it was actually really nice and cool on the run. Like you could do it in the ocean, like Pacific Ocean, right? It's pretty much in like around that time. If you're running along the ocean, you're still going to be in the 60s or 70s most of the day. But we just don't have very many races. There's no Ironmans on the Pacific Ocean.
No.
So,
no,
anyways,
I don't think. Well, not anymore. It was,
other than Alaska.
Cabo, yeah. Well, Cabo was.
That's right.
Yeah, but Cabo's done, and Cozumel is not. Yeah.
So, note to Ironman, we need Oceanside to be a full.
Yeah. There you go.
I think it used to be. Someone told me many years ago.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
So, but it could just be legend.
It could be lore. Who knows?
All right, John. Hey, well, we were able to kill another hour on a Friday night. Yeah. I feel better.
Yeah,
you feel better?
Good. Yeah, definitely. And
awesome.
Now I think I'm going to go recover in the hot tub.
I love it. Actually, I was in a hot tub about an hour and a half ago.
So. Oh, there you go.
The swimming pool we were at had a hot tub. I'm like, oh, it's 5 minutes. That's all I need after.
That's great. Hey, good talking. Enjoy up there.
Okay, thanks, John.
All right, talk soon. Bye.